Okay, so here's Ghaleon and let's start with the coaching now. Connection seems to be fine this time. So, as I informed earlier, I'm going to play 9-man and 18-man games. Probably some 8 tables or so to have some action, but still have time to talk about situations and so on. Here with aces, some random guy raising. I'm just going to raise him and stack off there. Can have like weaker flush draws, Jack X and such that he's going to play for stacks. It will be fine to just flat also. Maybe better to keep on the same stack and take away the side when the action comes. Here it's pretty somewhat tricky spot when he bets so big. I think I'm going to still call here, and if he checks then I just check behind, and if he had like south the river I would have been folding. So I now have 5 tables. So hopefully the audio is working as it should. And hi to everyone as well. Neo commented on the chat. So for these two formats, I think like if someone is playing 9-mans, 18-mans are going to be pretty easy game to move into. Here I'm going to isolate with this Jackson, then shoot it from relatively late position. Good playability and busy opponent, so it's decent spot. And now he min 3 bets, can't really fold with such spot odds, but it makes it a little bit trickier because it's tough to say about his range. Basically here I don't see reason to bet the turn, just some pot control, and if he's going to bet small here, I'm still going to call. Basically such a line make no sense from him. Like if he limp re-raises, he should be doing it with bigger sizing definitely. And here it has gone checked to me, so I think this is decent spot to stab the pot. If we take it down it's good, and if not we have quite a lot of equity. And here 2 callers with ace jack. No point to really see bet such flop. We do have some backdoors, but it so easily hits into one of them. Because when the flop goes checked and the turn checks also, it's quite unlikely. Quite unlikely they have a queen. I would have been calling if there would have not been another call. And here with ace king it's pretty easy. Easy stack off. Here when this reg ISO racist here, I think calling is going to be best because the range is going to raise call or raise 4-bet here is going to be pretty strong, so I don't really love the idea to 3-bet call pre-flop. And it doesn't hurt to keep this fizzy will line on the pot. And when he bets the 60, I'm not going to fold 2 overs. He gives such good pot odds. And here when the turn goes check, it's pretty unlikely he has queen, so I think here we can go for a value bet. If he does raise, we pretty much have to fold, because he's then going to have a flush draw or something better quite often, I think. Like if he has some weaker ace, he's most likely going to just flat. And Neo asked, do I isolate early positions in early game too without specific reads? I usually do with such layable hands from late position. Because very often when the layers limp early position, they are going to be fizzy. Seven tables now. Let's add one more 80 man. So if you guys have some questions about these formats, please feel free to ask. I think here it's decent spot to call with the suited ace. But like ace 5 offsuit, I would be just folding. And ace jack when a Reki type player goes for 3-bet versus our UTG open, it's going to be best to just fold. His range usually is something like ace king, jacks plus or something like that. Quite few really uses bluff ranges in those spots. Hmm. And I once again forgot to add my hard stat info. And here is another spot where I don't see that much merit in c-betting. Versus one opponent it will be okay. Well, Neo is asking about multi-tabling styles. That do I prefer one stack or multiple stacks? I have actually talked about adding another stack on my layout. Basically to add like 18 mens in here or other MTT SNG. Here I'm going to ISO race with the Queen Jack. I think this wreck is actually going to fold quite often because I think his range is going to be some set mining stuff and such. Big amount of time, and he doesn't really get that good what odds to call. So I've personally used just the one stack, and basically I have talked about using the other one to more easily distinguish situation when the game is 18 men or other MTT SNG, because it's often quite tough to see whatever it's 9 men or not, because it's only shown on the table title. But of course you can use multiple stacks so that you have like some bubble situations, maybe heads up situations in other stack. And here with ace 4 suited I'm going to shove, but like offsuit ace 4 it would be either open fold or min raise fold. And pocket 5s here, it's going to be best just to open shove. And here I want to use sizing that I can make it okay for Willline to continue with many of his draws and make it so that I can easily shove the river. Yeah, I do. I at least should have those. Uh, that is actually turn C bet. If those are correct, I'm not sure. Have I updated it now? Hands. Yeah, aggression factor should be the first one. Oh well. So anyway, the bottom row is aggression factor, c-bet, flop, c-bet, turn. And fold blind to steal. And the last one is limp fold SP. Mostly using that limp fold versus some Rex who are using a lot of small blind limping. And you ask what's your c-betting strategy after ISO raising, and what if multiple opponents call you? Well, basically, I'm not usually c-betting that much in like three-way or more pots, unless I have some either showdown value or some decent semi-bluff hand. Some dry flops are okay to c-bet, but if there is decent amount of draws, it's better to usually to check and play more straightforward style. And often versus one opponent you want to evaluate whatever you want to turn the hand into bluff by c-betting, or if it's better to check from position. And quite often you will be in position when ISO raising limpers. Here with pocket tens, I think calling is going to be best option. Folding is too weak, and like 3-betting or shoving, it's going to be quite tough to get action from wars. And with 20 pp it's not that great of risk reward ratio spot either. And here basically we get very small bet and call, but there's quite little value with our hand. And pocket sixes here. With most opponents we are like 10 or 11 pp deep. And we are on the first table of 18 man, so shoving is going to be okay. Here with any pocket pair it's pretty straightforward shove situation. Like some big pocket you can trap some portion of time, but these of the small or medium pocket pairs are going to be easy shove hands. And in just such situation it's pretty okay to flat with quite wide range overall. And here this flat caller seems to be very fishy guy, so I'm just going to value shove and probably well, he calls with 10-5. Good for us. Well, those color markings, I use yellow and red and light blue for Rex, and then green for busy fellows. Basically the red are like good Rex, and yellow ones are are like okay Rex. I mostly I have Rex marked as yellow actually, and then some like if some Rec is going to be like extra or really tight and so on, I tend to mark them as with light blue. Or if they are like very spooky overall. Here we are in the first bubble situation, so let's put a table on visible here. And king 10 suited here, it's going to be okay to solve. Offsuit will be little bit weak. But with suited it should be, it is good enough. And Neo asked on the when I had the pocket fives on the blind versus blind and we line called with ace 9, I think it's pretty standard. If he's going to min raise fold hand like ace 9, it's going to be extremely exploitable. And if he's like actively min raising, then I could be shoving like any two profitably if he's going to fold hand like that. And I think it's okay to min raise because the ace 9 is going to still have decent postal playability, and so it's not like disaster if I just flat call. But I think with like weaker aces, some ace 6 off and such, it would be reasonable to just open shove. And here with ace queen, I have to call his shove. It's not that great spot overall because he's not going to have that much force hands, but obviously I'm wrong here. And here, well, I think I'm just going to check. He was calling with such crappy hand earlier that I'm not really happy about shoving over 20 pp and flipping versus some trash hand. So I think check-in might be a bit better and play some post flop. That ace 5 hand 5 shove from the Rec was pretty weird versus UTG. UTG open race, it's not going to be pretty much ever profitable. But that is obviously something to note for, and would be good to check some database from the database of whatever he's been doing more of those. And ace 10 here, when the villain is Reki and he solves, he definitely has the capped range. I think worst situation here is that he has some small to medium pocket pair. I would never I think like I'm never going to be dominated here pretty much. And like ace jack or good pocket pair should be in his min raise calling range. And here I checked the flop with queens. I could have also c-bet. Okay, either way. And here in the river I'm going to value bet again, like if he has some 6 or 10. maybe even some like ace high he might be calling. I think versus this villain this could have been also bet situation. And I'm going to call here because I doubt he has king x that often and we get good pot odds. I think he's going to be often enough spewing with something weird. And when we have the call just 900 here, we don't need to be ahead that often. Like 900 to call for a pot of 5,000, 5,500, so like 20% of time is enough to be ahead of. And here we have another bubble with pretty deep stacks. So need some additional tables. King 7. This big stack have been so active that I just like to open fold. If he has had been tight player, it could have been reasonable to try and abuse this bubble spot a lot. Like in this ace-jack situation, it's knockout, so we would have some knockout value here, but he has not been that aggro, so I doubt I would be good enough here. Ace queen suited I would have probably called still. And ace 10 here. It's okay to open, okay to fold. Problem with open is that we can't really call anyone if they shove, but we do have blocker value here. And here I think so tilted will have something like ace queen, pocket 8 plus, lot of time here. He has quite small stack, but when he opens from the south from UTG +1 versus UTG open, he can't really have that wide range. Yeah. And they ask how are the games compared to end of December. Well, I haven't played that much. Just today started a little longer sessions, but game seems pretty good from what I have seen so far. Here with T-spot odds, I think it's okay to call because we do have some backdoor flush draw also. But it's not that great spot because It's still UTG open situation, so ranges are going to be relatively strong. And here we line checks the flop. I think it's okay to stab the bot right here. We do have the cut shot, which is nice, a nice extra here. But like 9 high doesn't have that much showdown value, so it's fine to just semi bluff. And here, even though the will line is decently active, I think Jack 8 off is going to be pretty standard in race. But not really a will line I would be trying to abuse with like extremely wide range here. And King 7 with knockout value, antis on play, and active wreck. This is going to be okay call. It's still quite marginal. We could actually mark that hand. But if he had been like 10 pp deep, I would have folded. And here with King 6 suited. I will min raise with the idea to call the small blind. With knockout value it does give some extra value here. And pocket force is not really going to be good enough here on the upper right versus 10 pp open. But I think like pocket 6s would be call. And here with ace jack I'm going to induce. And now ask if whatever I use donking. I usually use donking in situations where, like if there's multi-way pot, for example, and I don't think that there's going to be will line C betting that much, so it might make more sense to just value bet straight away. And I do use some semi bluffs in some situations also. In here I could stab this again, but I'm going to just check this time and then go for kind of delayed stab on the pot if he checks again. And when he does call this turn, I would not see that much fold equity. I don't doubt he would fold any pair, maybe some ace high or such. But like 4x is not going to fold most likely. And jack 3 suited. It's a little bit weak to go for open shove, and has quite little post of playability, so I think folding versus this villain is going to be best. And king deuce, I'm just going to min raise fold. Has little bit more blocker value. But problem with that hand again is that it doesn't have that much playability. So if you have a read that Villain's going to defend a lot by also flatting, it's not going to be that great hand. And here I think Jack High have some tiny bit of showdown value. And Pocket Force is pretty clear shove here. I doubt his limp would be trapped that often. Pretty much perfect kind of villain that he has such stats like 27/11, so he does usually raise the premium stuff, and limping range is going to be more on the mediocre hands. And here with pocket 5s, it's going to be profitable to shove here, and it's not really a hand I want to min raise versus opponent who is likely going to call white. And ace queen seems very nitty opponent, 40 hands, and he has 5/6 stats. I'm just going to give respect and give up the hand. But on the donking strategy, especially in heads up bots, I think it's kind of a tricky style because often people are c-betting. Most people are c-betting really wide or really often, and so often giving the opportunity for them to c-bet is going to have quite a lot of value. So that's why I don't really use that much donk betting. And now when we are in the heads up, I'm going to try to min raise very wide against him. And kind of a tricky situation here on the pocket 9's hand. It would be okay to make a small value bet, but if he does raise, we are very often going to be versus queen. But like if I check here and he bets, I don't think he's going to bet like any two pair combos and such, so it's then going to be more of the check fold. But if I bet myself, he might be inclined to call with some two pair combinations. And here when he pots so hugely, I'm just going to give up. No point to continue with ace high. If he had bet like half pot, it would be reasonable to call the flop. And Neo asks, how do I counter people who donk a lot? Well, you need to basically not give that much respect for their donk bets. Call little lighter and make some bluff races. And here with ace 10 I'm not going to bet it because I'm not going to get value from balls really, and then he bets 200. A kind of a situation where I think he has value hand very often. And board was such that a lot of hand combinations have something. And like in this situation, if I had king 6 I would be tempted to call quite often, because most often those kind of moves are some sort of draw or total air type. Sometimes top pair, but not that often. And pocket deuces with 30 blinds, I think flatting here and set mining, so it's going to be okay. And here I don't think he's going to fold anything better than mine really, or any pocket like pair at least. If he checks again here, it's decent spot to try and bluff, because he could have quite a few passed draws. And these sort of villains who are open raising like 3x constantly, it just limit our options quite a bit, because flatting is not really that much of an option without pretty decently playing hand. But on the other hand, villain makes it a lot less profitable for him to steal with such sizing overall. And when we did when I do shove and he has to fold, he's going to lose unnecessarily much. Here with king queen I'm going to 3x, and if he does limp shove, then I just call. And here this chip leader has been pretty active, so, and I'm going to be blinded out first, so I think this a7 spot is pretty good for me. Pretty good for me overall. And here on the turn, betting again is going to be best. It's ugly if he does check raise, but I think he has lot of one pair combination that still continued here. And here, well, he does bet pot again. Again, if he had bet smaller, I would be calling with my king high. But it's little ugly when he goes for such big sizing. And here with pocket fives, basically both just flatting and ISO racing are okay. good side of flatting is basically, or good side of ISO racing is that we more often get into heads up pot, and like in flop like this, I think we have best hand very often. And when he bets just mean bet, I don't really give that much respect on the flop. And here again very good pot odds, and he can have some weird crappy hands, and maybe betting still with some 3x or whatever. Ace high this time. So even if we don't really beat that much hands that would make like sense to bet here, it doesn't mean that we should be giving up that often. And here, kind of an ugly situation with pocket nines. I think calling is still going to be okay, but we can't really be doing this as some pure set mining or such. And here, if everyone folds, I think I'm going to stack off versus this villain. He seems to be very wild so far from his VPPFR. And he did have some smaller pockets. But I would not be surprised at all if he had also some like ace 10 or ace 8 or something like that, because of those stats. And here with queen 10, very active rec open racing, and PP is very passive, tight looking villain, so I think the rec has very wide win raise fold range here overall. So queen 10 is going to show decent profit. And his raise call with ace 9 is okay versus me. But that queen 10 offsuit, it's not like mandatory re-steal hand by any means, in my opinion. But versus active stealers, it's going to be okay. And like if I had like king 10 suited, I think it's pretty much mandatory. It's going to have so much equity, even versus calling ranges. And Neo here is commenting about the villain playing his ace jack the way he did earlier. There is going to be fizzy villains on every limit, and I mean there is huge fizzies on the bigger games like $100 games and so on. But of course the ratio between Rex and fizzy villains is going to be a lot worse most of the time in bigger games. And here in $15 games, I have not been playing this that much in this limit, so there's going to be a lot of pretty unknown villains, which some of them are going to be Rex. Rex I just don't know about. But usually, like if you have some, like even like 50 hands for example, it already tells quite easily if someone is Rex usually. King Queen. I think I just fold here with this early position. And Neo again commented about the adjusting about in those steal and re-steal situations. Yeah, it's very common on the rec versus rec situations that you get quite a lot of these much looser re-steal situation, three bet bluff situations and so on. Like versus unknowns, I don't really have like any 4-bet bluff situation ranges. Like if I open from late position and someone unknown or busy looking guy is going to 3-bet me, I won't be doing bluff 3-bets at all basically. But then if you have some rake, then it becomes a different situation and you can be like 4-betting some blocker hands some portion of time. As you can see here, there are a few wrecks even in these games, which I have quite a lot of hands, like 8.4k on this Valek. And actually I didn't even have him marked as wreck. Well, quite a feat. King Jack here. I'm going to shovel here, but it's going to be bottom of my range. Villain is not like very passive overall with PF, pre-flop raise of 15, but of course every steal stat is 0. I think this is quite marginal situation. We do have 88 hands on the villain and doesn't seem that active. But still with like stack wise that is like pretty perfect re-steal spot for us with 13 PP, villain raising from bottom. I think I'm going to start some 9 max games and let's end those and then check some hands I have marked. Maybe this 180 man as well seems to start right away. 8-4 suited here, it's not going to be good enough. And King 5 suited. Offsuit I would not be open shoving 9 PP. And even this King 5 suited is pretty close. Pretty close I would say. And for 7 I could try to use limp and go play here. Basically in hope that villain checks some like 9 high, he would anyway call versus my shove most likely. But he might fold it post flop. Not on this flop, but I think villain is going to be calling like hand like 8-2's offsuit also. with just 2 PP, as he seemed tracky. And I think like with that sort of limp and go style, very often you don't really lose anything versus Reki player. Because you have like most of time no fold equity pre-flop, so if you generate like 10% of time fold equity post-flop with hand like low kicker hand, it's going to be good for us. And pocket fours here, I'm just going to fold. Shoving is not going to be profitable, and min raising make little sense. And Neo asked about what are important factors when considering these resteal situations. Well, basically, I use lot of steal stats from will lines. I have decent amount of hands on, and also in some like especially on bigger deeper stacks, the fold to 3 bet stat is pretty important because there are regs who are not going to fold much to 3 bets. I think some regs have like 35% fold to 3 bet, and some might have like 70%. So changes a lot whatever we want to have a lot of like bluff 3 bets, or how we want to construct a 3 betting range. But versus in situations where we pre-steal with shoving, I think basically more important stats are the steal stats. We can make some assumptions about the opening ranges. And then of course one thing to always consider is the other will lines the open raiser has behind him, because even if he knows that you might be doing light re-steals, but there are like 2 other players who seem to be very tight, and that makes his win range a lot wider than it would be in case that, for example, you have 2 or 3 active 3 betters behind. And I think when if you are against okay rec, you do get value from thinking about those other villains as well, because it should be affecting the villain open racing range. And sometimes like in some situation you have like big blind sitting out and you are on the small blind, it often can get into kind of funny situations when you basically know that some rake is opening 100% from the bottom or very close to it, and might get quickly into 3 bet 4 bet situations and so on. Here I just flatted. Flop is pretty safe for my hand overall. And I want to keep the rec also in the play. And when it goes checked, I'm going to bet decently big sizing. I think this unknown villain is going to be calling any AX here. Could have used maybe even some 350 or so. Okay, so now we have the all the games we are going to play. Here ace 3. I'm just going to fold here. Not the greatest of villain because he doesn't have so far had not been raising at all, so it indicates that he can be having decent amount of very strong hands in his limping range also. And basically here we can't really, or I don't like to solve the ace 3 because we're like 15 pp deep with the blinds or something like that. So kind of situation that if we want to play we need to raise small, and then we are kind of a pot committed versus the limper if he does solve. And here it's fine to just set mine. And 4-7 suited is going to be solved if it's unopened. Like some portion of time when we had, for example, that king 3 on the bottom, if we had like someone very active open racer from cutoff who folds lot of time to 3-bet, it would be decent spot to just 3-bet bluff from the position with the king blocker. But then again, versus unknown, it's pretty bad idea. And overall in the smaller, especially in the smaller buy-in games, it's good to keep those 3-bet bluffing ranges pretty small. But when you have decent sample on some regular, you can then try those bit more. If we were in like blinds, I would be calling this solve, but in this position I don't think it's going to be profitable. And ace deuce from this early position, I'm not going to solve. Any suited ace would be totally fine, and some ace 7 or so from offsuits. And Neos, what is my shoving range from small blind versus unknown in big blind? Well, it's kind of a wide question. Basically, unknowns have quite often have quite static calling ranges, meaning that usually they don't call wide enough when they have like something like 5 pp or 7 pp. So I think in some situation it can be okay to just solve any two like 5 or 6 pp deep, for example. And king 8. Quite close spot again. Suited king 8 I would have been calling versus that opponent. But as you might have noticed, some villains who have like 200 hands here, it's quite easy to see whatever they are. RX, like here, 150 hands. Villains seem very breaky overall. And from stats like 3 bet, it's often quite tough to say with such small sample. Here with pocket 8, there's not really value in C betting. So I'm just going to check flop, check turn. And even in river, villain can have some weak ace x or some pocket tens here. But I think when he does bet here, he either has some AX. I doubt he would be value betting some pocket tens. So I think here calling the river is fine. Well, he did have queens. But like c betting make little sense because I think if when villain has hand like queens, he's going to call the flop c bet, and then if we want to get hands like that to fold, we need to second barrel, but it's quite tough to. But it's kind of an unnecessary, in my opinion, to turn the hand into bluff. And a6 here. PP seems very extremely tight, so I'm going to try to steal it. And these two opponents on my left seems also such that they are not going to be flat calling that often. Which is much better overall with hand like a6 compared to some villain who's like 14/10 fishy villain who's going to call a lot. Or much more often. Because the a6 then doesn't have that much post of play ability. And here with ace deuce we have 5 pp, so I'm going to ISO shove here. We should be in decently good shape with the small stack, and we do get decently often more chips from these blinds. And queen then definitely bottom of my opening range. Could be folded also because also the blind seemed quite decent, so or okay opponent, so it would be much better to have some very fishy player on the blinds. We haven't got any at least any active and bubble situations so far, so hopefully some of those will come at the end. Well, just one active man going on, so and here we have some fold equity by shoving, and overall with these pot odds it's quite close, or should be in shoving range in the Nash range also. And ace queen with 11 pp, I'm happy to just open shove it, because when we min raise and someone flats it, often gets into quite awkward situation if missing flop. Here on the bubble situation, it's pretty good for us that we have somewhat passive wheel line on our right. Well, running into monster once again, but sucking out this time. 7-9 suited, of course, is very clear opens out here. And now the small blind seems quite active, so I don't really like. I thought about the idea to min raise fold versus both, but much better style if the small blind had been tighter. And ace jack calling versus anyone. And like in the here with this stack distribution, it would be okay to shove pretty wide, but not with 5-2s. Five jack suited, I could be trying min raising here. Little bit stronger, like jack 8 suited, for example, I would have been just open shoving. And king 9 would have been good enough versus the small blind. Especially with knockout game. And here on the bottom right, Eastern suited is going to be good enough. It's pretty much the bottom of our calling range there. Ace 5 could have been possibly min raise fold situation if it was unopened. It's kind of an okay hand, because when we min raise with this sort of 11 pp stack, it's often look like situation where we don't really fold that much, so usually the shoving ranges are going to be pretty tight. And here I shoved the egg 2s because Villain was clear middle stack. No 18-man final table situations this time. Yeah, the tables moved little too much on the right now. Always forgets that. We can check that Eastern suited situation again. I think it's pretty borderline. 10-7 suited, I'm just going to shove here, it's good enough. Like 10-7 offsuit I could have been just min raising. And here, king jack, we can either open shove or min raise call. Those would be my standard lines. And here with a6 we are third in chips and so on, so we need to be relatively tight here. And with jack high, 3 pp behind, have to call. Jack 5, bit too weak. Ace 9 here is again quite close when we do have the middle stack. I think it's again little bit better to flat versus this active will line. Very unlucky ending here on the bottom left. Here on the bottom right, I'm not going to shove 4-3 versus rec. No shove from the PP managed to still fold. Basically with those pot odds, he should have been calling with any two, because it kind of protects him when the sidepot is empty, so it's very often going to be. And here it's actually quite interesting spot, because the will line rec here is going to be, I think, very wide with his min raise range here overall. But we can mark that hand as well. I think his min raise call with pocket fours is not going to be good. And jack 3, with these small stacks I'm just going to shove it. And here is another spot where we could be trying some tricky plays. Basically here it's somewhat awkward spot for Villain to call from out of position. So it's more often that players are going to fold or four-bet shove. And then again we do have a decent hand that if the big blind with his small stack does wake up, it's not like total disaster. And here on the top right, it's again spot where we can try to min raise, because it's pretty effective overall if villains think they don't have that much fold equity. And Queen 9 suited is pretty okay hand to be just open shoving. The second in stack seems to be Reki player, so I don't think he's going to be making any extremely stupid calls. And that King Jack suited I made earlier, it's always risky move overall, but then again if I think that the rec is going to be abusing a lot with min races there, I think it's pretty good still. And I was actually pretty surprised that he did call with the pocket forced. It's quite absurd call in my opinion. But then again, it probably makes our shove a bad play. They just fold that one. Like here, if the button would have been min raising, I would usually just fold hands like these, because the risk of trapping tends to be quite big. Congratulations, 5000 VPP for this year. Not have been playing that much. And with this 8 deuce, it make no sense to shove, because PP should be calling decently wide. And it's actually pretty good situation if the small blind shoves and the PP calls and wins, because then it will will make these other players' stacks more even. And here it's pretty good safe spot for us to survive with these middle stacks being Reki players. It's much nastier if one of them is some fizzy fellow who might be like calling with some ace 8 or something. And here it then for... I think this is pretty close with the pot odds, but I kind of like to fold a little more in these situations to keep the bubble running. When we do have such huge chip lead. And as I mentioned in beginning, I think these 9-mans are, if you are playing 9-mans and want to widen your game formats, it's pretty good to go for those 18-mans because it's pretty similar game staying on the full table size, and the ICM is going to be very strong in both of these formats in bubble situations. For comparing like in 6 max, the biggest change is obviously the table being smaller, and also the ICM is not going to be that heavy. Again, good spot to shove wide. I kind of like to fold these absolute trash hands. Could mark this also. Because we can shove very wide here because we have such huge chip lead that basically both of these wheel lines should be being in quite a folding war situation. If it had been like 8-4 suited, I would have been shoving it as well. And not hand right away. Okay, so let's close the stars client and go through some of those marked hands. I didn't mark all of them like that pocket 5 hand and that ace 10 suited, but I think we can find them. No need for full month hands. So these 5 hands I have marked from this session. Well, let's go through these first. So this was the blind versus blind situation with pretty active rec, as we can see. Small blind still 70% and active all the way as well. So with FGS ranges, King 7 would actually be absolute bottom, but this was also a knockout table, so if we expect Villain to solve range like this, I think we can take some minus EV from these, like probably King 4 might be close, for example. So King 7 was pretty decent, but even in normal game without knockout, it would have been decent call anyway. And I think, well, some wrecks can be even wider here with 8 PP, but I don't think most are going to be much tighter from the good wrecks. And we can also make the plot. So Villain needs to be shoving the 50%. And here we had the Queen 10 re-steal situation. And I think this was pretty good because this Great G, I have 105 hands on him and he's very tight player. And as we can see, So Tilted is pretty loose one with high steal stats, and with 13 PP he can have a lot of min-raise vault hands, especially with the tight big blind. So let's take the advanced hand here. And I'm just going to remove the additionally allows shove. It can be here, but I doubt Villain has that huge shoving range with the very tight big blind. So if we check just only with min-raise ranges, as default Queen 10 would not be in my re-stealing range. And I think like this sort of calling range for So Tilted is going to be pretty realistic, that he's going to call with most pocket pairs, and I think he's going to shove probably the smallest pocket pairs. But I like ace 9 he did call, but I doubt he would be going much wider than that, maybe ace 8. But if we do make the big blind shoving range much tighter, I doubt he would be shoving this much overall. Probably going to be much more value heavy. Like if we change it to something like this, it will be widening the open range quite a bit, and then of course our re-steal range does widen also. And Queen 10 would stay as break even with this assumption, but I would think that his button min-raise calling range is going to be little bit tighter. Maybe something like this. So with these assumptions it will be 1.0 or 1.1, is 0.1, well, 0.1%. So marginal SAV, but I think reasonable in this situation. But as we can see here, it's always good to also not check just your specific hand, but what we could be shoving here. As we can see, small offsuit aces are not going to be that great re-steal hands. Suited hands have much more profit, but then again we can also go quite wide with these suited connector hands. Like the 8-7 suited would be more profitable than Queen 10, and I think quite many will quite easily fold hand like a 9-8 suited and shove hand like King 10 or Queen 10 off. And reason for obviously why those are okay re-stealing hands, these suited connector, is that they have much better equity versus the calling ranges. Because hand like King 10, for example, is going to be dominated much more compared to 9-8 suited. Then Queen 7, I probably might have mismarked this hand. Well, we have like 7 PP here. I think this should have been calling hand if we had this sort of stats on the will line that he's been open raising 70%. Like if we check Queen 7 off from the heads upness equilibrium charts, it's going to be up to 8 PP. And we have little less than that here. So would have been okay calling hand here. And here is the re-steal situation. Well, one thing that might make the cutoff min-raise range a little bit tighter is the fact that button has only 7 PP. So it's kind of an awkward situation that if he does have some total crap, should he still be folding versus button or not? But this is again kind of a situation that Villain necessarily doesn't have a shoving range that much because he's still like 23 PP deep, over 20 PP deep versus the small blind. So it's quite a disaster if the small blind does wake up. So I think we are quite safe with going just min-raise range. And if we check the default ranges, like here 26% is actually very tight open range for this spot, but it's because ORC assumes that the small blind is going to be abusing lot here. But even with these ranges, King Jack suited would be shoving range for us. But villain should not be calling with pocket fours. Like if we check here what sort of range we should be shoving, that pocket fours is going to be, if I check this correctly. Well, it's at 20%. But like in this situation, I'm not going to be re-stealing with especially not with these mediocre offsuit aces. So it's going to be pretty, and quite likely I'm going to be somewhat tighter than this range would assume. But then again, I think in this sort of spot, if we tighten the other big stack shoving range more into value heavy stuff, so let's say it would be something like this, for example. It should widen the open range hugely. So now Villain could be open raising 42 43%, even though these other two players are now shoving wider. So it's decent spot for us to be shoving, at least if Villain is not going to be calling very wide. But then again, if we have much tighter opponent open raising, like if it's like, let's say something like this, then our range will be very value heavy overall. Well, it would still contain king jack suited, but it also assumes that Villain would now be calling our shove with very tight range, and we did see that he called us with pocket force, so let's say he's going to be calling like, if he calls like that, then our range is going to be very tight. Just jacks plus. So situation that depends extremely lot on the opponent. And here was this 8-4 offsuit spot. And I think this is actually quite close to any two, because of our stack and Villain's even stacks. Not quite any two, but 80%. And I think the big blind Villain can be even a little bit tighter here. I think something like this might be more realistic, which probably makes our sub-range into any two. But this very trashy hand will still be very marginal, so it would be no crime to fold those. And then we had the ace-10 suited hand on the bubble. I think we can quite easily find it by doing some filtering. Ace-10 suited, all in pre-flop. And I think we hero position, small blind, one razor and razor position bottom. I think these filters should bring it pretty clearly. It's not a marked hand, but anyway. And so here it is. I think this chip leader had been very active thus, for we are quite break even. I think this was probably actually too loose. But let's see. Well, if V-line is having any two, it's 0.14%. So yeah, it's pretty very marginal call. And then if V-line is not showing any two, it quickly gets pretty bad. So I think I didn't have good enough reads that V-line would be showing any two here to make that sort of call. But I think still ace jack suited would have been okay. And then there was that pocket fives hand, I think. We were shoving from the small blind again, and it was one limper. And we flop all in. And Neo is asking, does it still make sense to steal versus short stacks, and is there burden on how short they can be? Well, as I said, I think didn't find anything now. Well, we can also recreate the situation. I think it was on three-handed situation. Well, I can't find it now, but if we try to get, if I remember the situation correctly, that it was something like well, if he does create, the Neo commented that there was another pocket 5 three-handed where you shoved way over 10 pp to chip leader from button and short stack in small blind. Let's say that we have three-handed situation with these blinds. We have like 3500 on the button. Let's say something like that, and it will be something like that in overall. Not advanced hand. For example, this sort of situation that we have 17.5 pp's. it's still going to be marginal sub with pocket fives, even if big blind is calling this sort of range. And I think, well, we can't really decrease that much here. Maybe some king queen suited. Probably we can make it maybe like something like this. Gets a little bit better, but I think I wasn't that deep actually in that situation. It was more like 15 pp or something, and then it should be pretty standard, even if villain is calling decently wide. And even if villain is, I think I was shoving because the big blind was flatting, or I was expecting him to flat a lot versus min raise, but even villain like that is not usually calling extremely wide when we do shove this much. So I think it's pretty often most optimal line in this sort of situation to just open shove, even if we do give information about our likely range. Like if we think about what sort of range we might be having, it could be maybe something like well, actually it would be pretty much small to medium pocket pairs, I think, almost purely, because the villain had not been 3-betting much, so I don't have reason to really solve these sort of like queen jack shooter type of hands. But then again, villain is probably not adjusting this sort of range for our shoving range. But anyway, I think this was the end of my coaching this time. Probably a little bit rusty as I haven't been kept this coaching for a while. Hopefully I remember some point to show these stats right away. But anyway, thanks for the watchers and people who commented, especially Neo. So if you are going to continue playing this evening or so on, good luck and good night to people who go to sleep. Bye.